So to talk as though clearly 100%, no argument, we need radical fat acceptance, no mention of the potential downsides, is really irresponsible. Stumbled upon this one on Instagram. I'm with Lizzo, Why the Vegan Anti-Fat Bias Needs to End Now by Jasmine Singer for Veg News. For those of you who have seen my videos on health at every size, intuitive eating, I have a really long one on intuitive eating. You probably have some idea of what I'm going to say here, but yeah, I have some thoughts. In a world where discrimination can range from hurtful, fat people are routinely the butt of jokes in everything from casual conversation to big screen Hollywood movies, to outright dangerous, doctors regularly advise weight loss without further analysis to fat patients while recommending blood work, CAT scans, or physical therapy for patients of smaller size experiencing the same symptoms. Fat people are regularly given the message that they are unworthy. So one of these things is not like the other. Making fun of fat people is awful, but a doctor saying lose some weight, like that's their job. They're supposed to help us get healthy, to stay healthy. If someone walks in to a clinic, to a doctor's office who's 50 pounds overweight, it would be irresponsible for a doctor, for a medical professional, not to say something. Obviously, there are crappy doctors who have no tact and no people skills, but that's not what Jasmine's criticizing. She's not criticizing the way it's said. She's criticizing the very idea of doctors suggesting weight loss to patients. You can argue that fat people already know they're fat, so this is just adding insult to injury, and in some cases, I'm sure that's true. The person may already be trying to lose weight. But as Jasmine points out, most Americans are fat. Most Americans are overweight. This may lead us to have a distorted view of what fatness is. Someone may know they're overweight, but they may not know they're obese. They may not know the severity of the situation because so many people around them look exactly the same. If everyone's doing it, it can't be that bad, right? It's kind of like what happened with my second pregnancy. I certainly got a lot of like, oh, you've been here before, you don't, need this spiel or whatever. But I also got a lot of redundant information that frankly, I just did not need. I already knew all of that stuff. But it's not just about me. I'm not their only patient, and I can't expect treatment to be perfectly tailored to me and what I know. It makes sense for a doctor, nurse practitioner, whatever, to assume that every patient just doesn't know very much or has forgotten the information and needs a refresher. In the same way, it makes sense for a doctor to assume an obese patient just doesn't know, again, the severity of the situation there is, and maybe doesn't know that it's really important that they start exercising and eating healthfully. Many of the top killers in this country are directly tied to obesity. Medical professionals need to treat the patient, not their size. Sure, and I'm sure there are cases where doctors are just like, oh, weight loss because it's easier, and that's not the answer. But in many cases, the easiest way to care for someone and the way that makes the most sense is to focus on their weight, on their diet, on exercise. We don't have infinite resources to treat every person. If someone comes in with high blood glucose and they're obese, there's a solid chance their diet, their obesity, their level of activity or lack thereof have something to do with it. It makes no sense to ignore that and focus on less likely causes when 90+% of type 2 cases are caused by diet and lack of exercise. Unless there's another obvious indicator, you start with low-hanging fruit. You start with weight. To do otherwise is to waste time and resources. But of course, all of this only makes sense if you believe obesity is bad. If you don't, if you think obesity is fine, if you think the whole link between obesity and diabetes, cancer, high blood pressure, whatever, is overblown or even just not true, then it makes sense for you to be outraged by doctors talking to their patients about weight loss. If obesity just isn't a problem, then yeah, why would they do that unless they're just fat shaming? And like many in the fat acceptance movement, Jasmine does think being fat, being obese is perfectly fine. So can you be fat and healthy? According to Dr. Yemi Cazorlo Lancaster, the answer is a resounding yes. She then quotes this pediatrician, "Research shows that stigmatizing weight actually leads to worse outcomes for mental and physical health." What does that have to do with whether or not you can be fat and healthy? Yes, you can be fat and healthy because fat shaming is bad? What? What? The two are not mutually exclusive. You can believe that obesity is bad, but also fat shaming is bad. The doctor also says, perhaps a person's health should be just between themselves and their healthcare provider. But Jasmine has a problem with that too, as we already learned. Like, doctors just talking to patients about weight loss rather than running a battery of likely unnecessary tests on them is fat shaming. So just never talk about weight loss ever, I guess. Anyway, I'm not going to go into detail on obesity and health at every size and all of that stuff because, again, I have an entire video on it, so check that out if you like. Here she starts talking about Lizzo and some of the reactions to her radical self-love, including Jillian Michaels. Why are we celebrating Lizzo's body? Because it isn't going to be awesome if she gets diabetes. Like, I love her music, but there's never a moment where I'm like, and I'm so glad she's overweight. Seemingly, that's how a lot of people feel. Part of her appeal is that she's fat. And to some degree, I get it. Again, saying obesity is bad is not the same as saying fat shaming is good. And there is an argument to be made for more fat people in media, particularly music, leading to more acceptance and less fat shaming. But it also feels weird, right? It reminds me of, I swear to God, anytime I see mention of Missy Elliott, there are people heaping praise on her for how she dresses and that, like, she doesn't dress like a hoe or whatever. Shut the fuck up. Also, isn't it possible that this has a negative outcome? That, you know, by praising people for being fat, that it leads other people to believe it's fine to be fat? Like Lizzo says she's fat and healthy, so it's fine if I stay fat or get fat. Ultimately, I don't see a problem with what Jillian Michaels says here. I mean, I'm not usually one to defend Jillian Michaels. I think The Biggest Loser is not great at all. But, I mean, again, I believe that obesity is bad. I think it increases the risk for horrible conditions like diabetes. So it's unsurprising I wouldn't really have a problem with what she says. But yeah, if you don't believe that, if you don't believe obesity is bad, then I guess it makes sense. The outrage makes sense. Her body, her choice. But maybe also realize that that's where we're coming from. That's where Jillian Michaels and me and like most people are coming from when we say, hey, we don't want you to be fat. We don't want you to be sick. It's because we believe that fatness leads to illness, right? It's not out of hatred or something. I mean, I'm sure for some people it is, but I think most people that's not where it's coming from. I find this section of the article really interesting. It perfectly encapsulates the problem I have with many social justice type people, just how little they care about evidence. Just as caring about racial justice as well as fancying yourself a feminist arguably means the main focus should be on liberating the Black trans community, to be body positive means the focus should be on achieving radical fat acceptance. Give her some credit, she does say arguably, but like clearly this is the argument she's making, that the focus of any social justice cause should be on the most marginalized. She even says it's a moral imperative. Feminism should be about Black trans people. Racial justice should be about Black trans people. Body positivity should be about Black trans people. I mean, radical fat acceptance? But why? Where is the evidence that focusing on a specific group of Black people is more effective, helps more Black people? Where's the evidence that focusing on a specific group of bodies is more effective, helps more people achieve body acceptance? And seriously though, why stop at fat people? Why not Black fat people? Aren't they even more marginalized? Why not Black trans fat people? Why not Black trans disabled fat people? Why not Black trans disabled, homeless fat people? I'll tell you one reason you may not want to do this. The narrower you make your cause, the less support you're going to get. People just are not that altruistic. Most of the people advocating for feminism, for Black rights, for whatever, are advocating for yourself. So as soon as you start tacking on characteristics that don't apply to them, you risk losing them entirely. And you make your entire cause less effective. You end up having to expend so many resources to maybe marginally improve the lives of a few people. And clearly people like Jasmine do realize this, otherwise they would keep drilling down to like the truly most marginalized person. They don't do this because on some level, maybe without even realizing it, they know how ineffective that would be. It's just so impossible to talk about social justice issues, to respond to activists, because our entire worldviews are just so radically different. They are starting from a place of justice and justice in and of itself, and I'm starting from consequences. What is going to reduce the most suffering with the least amount of resources? And it's not clear at all that focusing on Black transgender people is going to reduce suffering more than focusing on Black people generally. And it's not clear at all that focusing on radical fat acceptance is going to reduce suffering more than just focusing on body positivity generally, or taking a whole different approach and focusing on, say, weight loss. Again, what if by focusing on fat acceptance, we lead people to believe that being fat is fine, that there's no difference health-wise between being fat and being thin. It's not too difficult to imagine because, again, people already do this within the fat acceptance movement. And then what if people decide that, well, why would I lose weight? There's no reason to, right? And then they don't. That's a pretty terrible outcome. I'm not saying this will happen. I have no idea, which is ultimately my point. I have no idea. Nobody knows. But what we do know is that obesity is bad. It hurts people in a myriad of ways, not just the individual, but the entire society. So to talk as though clearly 100%, no argument, we need radical fat acceptance, no mention of the potential downsides, is really irresponsible. I realize this is difficult to talk about. I realize it's hard if you are overweight, if you're obese. It's hard to say obesity is bad, but I'm not bad, right? It's so easy to make the leap from obesity is bad to I'm bad. On the other hand, I think it's probably really easy to make the leap from love yourself and I love myself and I'm obese and I love my obesity. Obesity's fine. But we have to find a way to do both. We have to be adults about this. We have to be able to say, I love myself, but I don't love my condition. I don't love the way it makes me feel, the way it makes me look, whatever. To talk as though all physical bodies are just totally equal is silly to the point of being patronizing. I believe this was from My Opinions Will Probably Offend You, I think is what the channel's called, but she had this little goofy skit, but I thought it made a pretty good point. Pretend there's a body store and you get to choose between a very overweight body that makes you really heavy, your joints hurt, you're winded when you go upstairs, all of that, and a fit body. Which one would you choose? Would anyone really choose the obviously unhealthier body that makes it hard for you to do daily activities? That would be like choosing the disease-ridden, cancer-ridden kidney over the healthy kidney. No, why would you do that? It doesn't mean you're a bad person for being overweight, just like it doesn't mean the person with a cancer-ridden kidney is a bad person. One of the few moments in the article I agree with Jasmine on is the section, just because it's vegan doesn't mean it's healthy, just talking about how quick vegans are to point out when something is junk food. Like, yeah, dude, no, we know. Someone posting a donut doesn't mean they're saying, hey, donuts are healthy because they're vegan. Like, who the fuck thinks that? We know it's not healthy. Shut up! My responses to these misinformed comments aim to educate folks on how the ethical part of this movement does not dictate how a person should look or eat in order to liberate animals. Just that they do everything they can to liberate animals. Not to nitpick, but like, isn't our health important for our advocacy? I mean, isn't it going to be hard to advocate for animals if we're sick from eating too many vegan donuts? Asking for a friend? I see what they're saying. Everyone should be able to advocate for animals, to advocate for veganism, regardless of the size of their body. But self-care for advocacy is really important, and being 50 plus pounds overweight is not self-care. Body sizes are diverse, and you cannot tell what someone eats or how active they are based on their size. And regardless, everyone is worthy of respect. That second sentence, sure, no one deserves this shit. But the implication of the first sentence, like, yeah, sure, you can't totally know what someone is doing based on their size, but you can probably get a pretty good idea. It's not like we don't have any idea what sort of lifestyle leads to obesity. If you're overweight, you're consuming more calories than you burn, and very, very likely those calories are not coming from broccoli and beans. They're coming from highly processed, highly palatable, high-calorie foods. It is very difficult to become obese on a healthy diet. There's a reason you see such low obesity rates among people who eat mostly whole foods. Honoring bodily integrity, practicing empathy, and boycotting systems that oppress marginalized communities are core ethics for many vegans, and yet, fat bodies are often pushed aside in favor of thinner ones that fit the arbitrary, archaic, Americanized standards of beauty. That is, able-bodied, white, and thin. This colossal disconnect begs the question, on what planet is anti-fat bias a part of animal liberation? On the planet where obesity is bad and people are selfish? So this one? If being vegan was positively correlated to obesity, which means that if you eat vegan, you're more likely to be obese, that would be bad. But the opposite is true. We see a negative correlation. If you're vegan, you're less likely to be obese, which is pretty good. I'm no dietary vegan by any means, but again, most Americans are overweight, so it makes sense to at least mention, like, hey, did you know that a vegan diet could help you lose weight, could help you maintain a healthy weight? to people who care about it. And a lot of people care about it. If you want to promote veganism effectively, you have to make it about people to some degree. Most people just do not care about farm animals on their own enough to change the way they eat, to drastically change their diet. But they do care about their health, and it makes sense to think that maybe combining the two, people's care for animals somewhat with obviously their care for their health, and able to tip the scales in your favor or in the animal's favor. Not saying we should promote veganism as the best diet, the healthiest diet, or the best diet for weight loss. Y'all know I don't believe that. You can be healthy and lose weight while eating animal products, but you can also be healthy and lose weight without doing that, without supporting that industry. I mean, sounds pretty good to me. Anyway, if you want a video on reasons to go vegan that have nothing to do with animal ethics, check it out. If vegan organizations pay lip service to fat vegans in a social media post, but still speak about veganism as a weight loss plan, address that. What if someone asks, like Veg News or whatever, hey, my doctor said I need to lose weight. Can I do that on a vegan diet? Like, can they answer? Can they answer that question? Like, what do you do? Just point and scream diet culture? Now, I will say there are people within the vegan movement who definitely have a skewed view of fatness. I've talked about this here on this channel. I've been called fat before, even though my BMI is well within the normal range. So yeah, that shit needs to stop. But just to say, fat loss in general, don't ever talk about fat loss in a vegan context, or I guess in any context. It's so silly. It's so over the top. Like, it's hard not to laugh about it. But it's really not funny. If people really believe that just that weight loss is bad. Oh. In order to end anti-fat bias and extend a justice-based worldview to include all individuals, the representation of fat and other marginalized bodies needs to become commonplace. Vegan messaging has to be removed from damaging weight loss rhetoric altogether. Nosy friends must stop suggesting that their fat buddies should lose weight and instead work aggressively on their own damaging perceptions and behaviors. These are all completely different issues under the anti-fat bias umbrella. Fat representation needs to increase. Okay, but why? Do you have evidence that this is actually a good thing, that this has a net positive result for society? Veganism and damaging weight loss rhetoric have to be separate. So I guess you can have damaging weight loss rhetoric, but it just has to be separate from veganism. Seriously though, what is damaging weight loss rhetoric? Are we talking about like dangerous diets, way too low calories, or fad cleanse diets or whatever? Or are we just talking about weight loss generally? Because those are two very different things in my mind. And then finally, nosy friends need to stop suggesting that their fat friends lose weight. Again, evidence that this is harmful? And there's no indication what kind of suggestion. Like, are they being cruel to the person? Has the person told them to stop? Or are they really just like worried about their friend? And, you know, maybe doing that, maybe actually suggesting that someone lose weight or whatever, you know, the most tactful possible way you could bring that up. Now, not saying I have the answer, but, you know, maybe that is enough fuel for someone to actually improve their health. Maybe that makes them realize that, oh, wow, I didn't know things had gotten so bad. I need to improve my diet and maybe exercise. Without solid evidence that this is harmful, suggesting people need to stop absolutely right now is irresponsible. So, do I have anti-fat bias? Well, yeah, just like I have anti-cancer bias and anti-diabetes bias. Cancer and diabetes are bad. They cause a lot of pain and suffering. Being obese causes a lot of pain and suffering. Daily activities can be hard for a lot of people. And it also significantly increases the risk for various conditions, including cancer and diabetes. That doesn't mean I think fat people aren't worthy, or that they can't be vegan, or that they can't be vegan educators. It doesn't mean that I think we should shame and bully fat people. But it does mean I'm worried when outlets like Veg News say we need more prominent vegans to be fat. I think we need less prominent vegans to be fat because I think we need less people to be fat in general. I want people to be healthier. I also worry that having more people promoting this fat and proud message could possibly lead other people to believe it's fine to be fat and maybe to stop their own weight loss journey or never try to lose weight in the first place. So that's it. I don't think this will be too controversial. Usually it's not when I talk about this sort of stuff. I think most vegans are acutely aware of the issues with obesity, but I do see more of the crazier social justice stuff starting to creep on in, which is not surprising. When everything is about inclusivity and including every single group, you run the risk of people just supporting everything, right? It's not enough to be like, hey, come on in. We have to also support it. And we have to also say, obesity is fine, actually. It's just our dumb brains. It's just impossible for us to say fat shaming is bad. Obesity is also bad. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I really hope you liked it. Like the video if you did. Click the bell if you want to be notified when I upload. You can also support the channel, patreon.com/unnaturalvegan. I upload 2 exclusive videos there every month for $5 plus patrons. I also have shirts. I also have an Amazon store page. I don't know why I'm getting more like, not even like Southern, what is that? That's like Southern Belle, Southern. Not at all how we talk in Memphis, but okay. Even Southerners, I find when we do like a Southern voice, it's like not even a Southern voice that exists. It's also like a caricature of Southern. And of course there is no Southern, right? Memphis Southern is totally different from fucking Savannah, Georgia Southern. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. New video soon. I do find it morbidly funny, I guess, that this never runs the other way. Like, where are the people rallying for Eugenia Cooney and telling people to leave her alone? Like, radical anorexia acceptance. Her body, her choice. She's anorexic and proud. I wonder if it's because, like, anorexia is just so shocking and so obviously bad and unhealthy and dangerous, whereas, again, fatness we see all the time. Reminds me of this story, I don't know where I heard this. This was years ago, but a person who was very overweight and had lost weight, and they talked about going to, I want to say it was Brazil or somewhere with low rates of obesity, at least at the time, and they would get so many looks, and they even had people coming up to them and asking them if they were okay, and then finally, you know, realized, or they would say like, you're so big, are you okay? Do you need help? In the way that we respond, and most people respond to anorexia, being so overweight was the same for them. They weren't used to seeing it. It was shocking. I worry that fat has become our new normal and we're just so desensitized to it, we don't realize just how unhealthy it is. In less serious news, I tried a really disgusting vegan milk. I'm not even gonna say what it is. I'm gonna save it because I'm gonna do another products video. I already have like 10 more products. It's ridiculous. I'm spending all this money now on products because I'm like, I'll do a video about it, as if that's gonna make up the cost of this stupid vegan milk that was like $6 per, what is it, like a quarter gallon? Oh my God.